The selfie was supposed to be simple. Academy Award-winning actor David Chen had just finished discussing his latest film when Ellen brought over 16-year-old Alex Martinez from the audience for a quick photo opportunity. David was used to nervous fans, but when Alex approached, something in their posture made him pause. The teenager wasn't excited or starstruck. They were trembling with what looked like fear mixed with desperate hope. And when Alex whispered 7 words that only David could hear, everything changed. In that moment, David realized that some of his most important roles happened not on movie screens, but in real life. The Warner Brothers studio was buzzing with the kind of energy that came from genuine star power. David Chen, the 34-year-old actor whose portrayal of a transgender soldier in Hidden Courage had earned him an Oscar and changed Hollywood conversations about representation, was Ellen's featured guest. His charm and authenticity had won over audiences worldwide, making him one of the most respected actors of his generation. Ellen was beaming as she wrapped up David's interview segment. "David, your performance in Hidden Courage wasn't just acting, it was activism. You've opened doors for so many people who never saw themselves represented in film before." David smiled humbly, adjusting his casual burgundy sweater. "Ellen, that means everything to me. If my work can help even one person feel less alone in their journey, then every challenging moment on set was worth it." "Speaking of people whose lives you've touched," Ellen said with her signature warmth, "there's someone in our audience today who's been waiting to meet you. Alex Martinez, where are you?" The cameras found Alex in the 4th row, and immediately Ellen sensed something different about this fan interaction. Alex wasn't jumping up excitedly or waving enthusiastically. They sat frozen, gripping their seat with white knuckles, their dark eyes wide with something that looked more like terror than joy. "Come on up here, Alex," Ellen encouraged, but Alex shook their head almost imperceptibly. Ellen's instincts kicked in. She walked down into the audience herself, approaching Alex with gentle concern. "Hey, sweetheart, don't be nervous. David would really love to meet you." "I can't," Alex whispered, so quietly that only Ellen's microphone caught it. "What if he thinks I'm weird?" Ellen sat down beside Alex, immediately understanding this went deeper than typical fan nervousness. "Why would he think you're weird?" Alex looked toward the stage where David was watching with patient kindness. "Because I'm like the character he played. I'm transgender, and my family doesn't know yet." The weight of those words hit Ellen immediately. She looked back at David, who had heard enough to understand this wasn't going to be a typical meet and greet. "Alex," Ellen said gently, "how long have you known?" "Since I was 12. I'm 16 now, and I've been hiding for 4 years. Watching David's movie was the first time I saw someone like me portrayed as a hero instead of a tragedy. It made me feel like maybe I could be brave too." Ellen felt tears beginning to form. "Have you been able to talk to anyone about this?" Alex shook their head. "My parents think being transgender is wrong. My school doesn't have any support groups. I live in a small town where being different is dangerous. Sometimes I wonder if I'll ever get to be myself." David, who had been listening from the stage, made a decision. He walked down into the audience, approaching Alex with the same gentle energy Ellen had shown. "Alex," David said softly, "can I sit with you?" Alex looked up at this person who had unknowingly become their hero, and nodded. David sat down on Alex's other side, creating a protective circle with Ellen. "Alex, can you tell me what my movie meant to you?" Alex's voice was barely audible. "It showed me that transgender people can be strong, can be heroes, can have lives worth living. Before that, all I ever saw were stories about transgender people suffering or dying. Your character fought for his country, had friends who supported him, found love. It made me believe that maybe someday I could have those things too." David's expression grew deeply moved. Alex, can I tell you something? Playing that role changed my life too, but not in the way you might think. Alex looked curious despite their nervousness. I'm not transgender, David continued, but taking on that role taught me about courage I'd never understood before. The transgender actors and consultants who worked with me on that film, they showed me what real bravery looks like. Living authentically when the world tells you you're wrong, fighting for your identity every single day, refusing to hide who you are despite the risks. That's heroism beyond anything I've ever portrayed on screen. Ellen watched this exchange with growing recognition of its importance. Alex, David said, you've been living that heroism for 4 years. You've been protecting yourself while staying true to who you are inside. That takes incredible strength. But I'm not being true, Alex protested. I'm hiding. I'm pretending to be someone I'm not every day. No, David said firmly. You're surviving. You're keeping yourself safe while you figure out how to live authentically. That's not cowardice, that's strategy. Ellen leaned forward. Alex, what would feel most helpful right now? I just want to know that it gets better, Alex said, tears starting to flow. I want to know that someday I'll get to be myself without losing everyone I love. David looked directly into Alex's eyes. It does get better. Not easily, not immediately, but it does. And you know how I know that? Alex shook their head. Because you're here. Because you had the courage to come to this taping, to ask to meet me, to tell Ellen and me your truth. That's not the action of someone who's going to stay hidden forever. That's the action of someone who's preparing to step into their authentic life. Ellen felt this was a crucial moment. Alex, have you thought about what steps you might want to take? I've been researching support groups online. There's one about an hour from my town that meets on weekends. I've been thinking about going, but I'd have to lie to my parents about where I am. David nodded thoughtfully. Alex, can I share some resources with you? Not just support groups, but organizations that help young people navigate these conversations with their families? You would do that? Alex asked, surprised. It would be my honor, David replied. But more than that, I want you to know that you have a community. You might feel alone in your small town, but there are thousands of people who understand exactly what you're going through. Ellen made a decision that would transform this moment. Alex, I want to do something that might help. David, would you be willing to stay in touch with Alex? Not as a celebrity to a fan, but as someone who can provide support and resources? David didn't hesitate. Absolutely. Alex, would you be comfortable with that? Alex's eyes widened. You'd actually want to help me? Alex, meeting you today has reminded me why I chose to play that role. It wasn't just for awards or recognition. It was for moments exactly like this one. It was to help young people like you feel less alone. Ellen pulled out her phone. I'm going to give you both a moment to exchange contact information. And Alex, I want you to know that the Ellen DeGeneres Foundation has programs specifically designed to support LGBTQ+ youth. We're going to make sure you're connected with resources in your area. Alex looked between Ellen and David with amazement. I came here today just hoping to get a selfie. I never imagined. You came here today because you were brave, Ellen corrected. You took a step toward living authentically, even though it scared you. That's exactly the kind of courage that changes lives. David reached into his wallet and pulled out a card. Alex, this has my personal email address. I want you to write to me. Tell me how you're doing, ask me questions, share your victories and your struggles. You don't have to navigate this alone anymore. Ellen stood up and addressed her entire studio. Ladies and gentlemen, we just witnessed something extraordinary. Alex had the courage to share their truth, and David showed us what it means to use your platform responsibly. This is what representation really looks like. Not just seeing yourself on screen, but finding community and support in real life. She turned back to Alex. What does this moment feel like for you? Like the first time I've been able to breathe in 4 years, Alex said, tears flowing freely now. Like maybe I really can be myself someday. David put his arm around Alex's shoulders protectively. Not someday. Today was the beginning. Today you started being yourself. Everything that comes next is just steps along a path you've already started walking. Ellen felt moved to make her own gesture. She took off her rainbow-colored bracelet, one she wore specifically to show support for LGBTQ+ youth, and placed it on Alex's wrist. Alex, this bracelet represents something important. It represents visibility, pride, and the knowledge that you belong exactly as you are. When you look at it, I want you to remember that you have a community of people who see you, support you, and celebrate your courage. The conversation continued for another 15 minutes, with cameras rolling but no concern for show timing. Ellen created space for David to share additional resources and for a genuine mentorship to begin forming. Alex, David said thoughtfully, what's the hardest part about hiding who you are? Alex considered this. The pronouns. Every time someone uses the wrong pronouns, it feels like a piece of me disappears. I practice introducing myself as Alex in the mirror, but I've never said it out loud to anyone. What pronouns feel right to you? Ellen asked gently. They and them, Alex said, and speaking those words seemed to give them strength. David nodded with complete acceptance. Alex, using they and them pronouns isn't confusing. It's honoring your truth. Ellen felt this was important for her audience. Using someone's correct pronouns is one of the most basic ways to show respect and support. I've never told anyone my pronouns before, Alex admitted. I was scared you'd think it was weird. Alex, David said firmly, there's nothing weird about knowing who you are. The weird thing would be pretending to be someone else your entire life. Ellen leaned forward. Alex, how did you first understand that you were transgender? Alex grew thoughtful. I remember being 8 and watching a movie where the girl character got to go on adventures. I thought, I want to be like her, but not because she's a girl. It took years to understand that the disconnect wasn't about wanting to be like other girls. It was about knowing I wasn't a girl at all. David listened with visible emotion. That must have been confusing to navigate alone. It was. I tried so hard to fit into what everyone expected, but it never felt natural. When I hit puberty, everything got worse. My body was changing in ways that felt completely wrong. Ellen felt protective toward this young person. That sounds incredibly isolating. I spent hours researching online, trying to understand what was happening. I found forums where other transgender people shared their stories, and that's when I realized I wasn't broken. David showed deep understanding. Finding community, even online, can be life-changing when you're figuring out your identity. Reading other people's experiences helped me understand that being transgender wasn't something that happened to me, it's just who I am. But knowing that and being able to live authentically are completely different things. Ellen nodded. What made you decide to come to this taping? Alex was quiet for a moment. I've been having dark thoughts lately, not about hurting myself, but about whether I'll ever get to really live. Watching David in Hidden Courage was the first time I saw a transgender character who got to be a whole person. David's eyes filled with tears. Knowing that my work helped you means more than any award. Your character didn't just survive, Alex continued. He thrived. He had people who loved him. He fought for something bigger than himself. It made me think that maybe someday I could have that too. Ellen felt moved by Alex's hope. And now? How do you feel about that future? More possible, Alex said. This conversation, knowing that people like David exist and care, having these resources, it makes the future feel reachable instead of impossible. David reached for his phone. Alex, I want to share a message I received after Hidden Courage was released. He read from an email. This was from a transgender man named Marcus, who served in the military. He wrote, "Thank you for showing that transgender people can be heroes. My fellow soldiers saw your movie, and for the first time, they understood that my identity doesn't define my ability to serve." Alex listened with attention. "The point is," David continued, "representation creates ripple effects. Your courage in sharing your story today is going to have similar ripples." Ellen smiled. "Alex, you're creating change just by being here and speaking your truth." "I never thought about it that way," Alex admitted. "I just thought I was asking for help." "Asking for help is creating change," Ellen replied. "Every time someone shares their authentic story, it makes it easier for the next person." David pulled out a business card and wrote something on the back. "Alex, this has my personal email, and I'm also writing down contact information for my friend Sarah Chen. She's a therapist who specializes in working with transgender youth and their families." Alex took the card with trembling hands. "You really think my parents could learn to accept me?" "I think parents love their children, even when fear makes them react poorly initially," David said carefully. "Some need education, some need time, and some need support. Sarah can help you figure out the best approach." Ellen added, "Whatever happens with your family, you'll never be without support again. David and I are going to make sure you're connected with people who understand your journey." "I felt so alone for so long," Alex said, tears flowing. "I never imagined that telling the truth could lead to feeling less alone." David smiled warmly. "Alex, isolation thrives in secrecy. The more you connect with people who see and accept you, the less power that loneliness has." Ellen stood up and addressed her audience. "This conversation represents something crucial. LGBTQ+ youth have a suicide rate 4 times higher than their peers, not because being LGBTQ+ is tragic, but because isolation and rejection are tragic." She continued passionately. "When we create spaces for young people like Alex to be seen and supported, we literally save lives. When we choose acceptance over fear, we give young people permission to live authentically." David nodded emphatically. "Alex, your courage today might inspire another young person watching at home to reach out for support." "You think someone else might see this and feel less scared?" Alex asked. "I know they will," Ellen said confidently. "Your story is going to matter to people you'll never meet." Alex looked around the studio at supportive faces. "I wish I could tell my younger self that this day would happen, that someday I'd be surrounded by people who see me and accept me." David's voice was gentle but firm. "You can tell your current self that this is just the beginning. You can tell yourself that your authentic life is not just possible, it's inevitable." Ellen made her gesture with the rainbow bracelet. "Alex, every color in this rainbow represents a different part of our community, but they're all part of the same beautiful whole. You belong here, exactly as you are." "I want to promise you something else," David said. "In 3 months, I'm attending a film festival that celebrates LGBTQ+ cinema. Would you like to come as my guest? I think it would be powerful for you to meet other transgender people who are living full, successful, joyful lives." Alex's eyes went wide. "You'd really invite me to that?" "It would be my honor. You've reminded me why representation matters, why this work matters." Ellen felt this was the perfect closing moment. "Alex, when you walked in here today, you were hiding. When you walk out, what will be different?" Alex smiled with new confidence. "When I walk out of here, I'll be walking as myself. Not completely, not everywhere yet, but with people who know my truth and support it. That feels like the beginning of everything." The episode that aired became a pivotal moment in LGBTQ+ representation on daytime television. It sparked conversations in homes across America about acceptance, understanding, and the importance of supporting transgender youth. 6 months later, Alex sent David an email with a photo. They were at their first support group meeting, wearing Ellen's rainbow bracelet and smiling confidently. The subject line read, "Taking more steps on the path you helped me start." David framed that photo and kept it in his dressing room on every film set afterward, a reminder that his most important performance was simply being present for a young person who needed to know they weren't alone. Ellen featured Alex's journey in several follow-up segments, showing audiences that courage comes in many forms, and that sometimes the most powerful moments happen when celebrities remember that their greatest role is simply being human. Alex's family eventually learned about their identity, and while the conversation was difficult, it led to greater understanding and acceptance. Alex credited that day on Ellen's show as the moment they found the strength to live authentically. David Chen continued to choose roles that promoted positive representation, but he never forgot that his most meaningful work happened not in front of cameras, but in moments like these, when visibility became connection, when representation became support, and when a scared teenager learned they were never as alone as they thought. Ellen learned that sometimes the most important television happens not when you're entertaining people, but when you're affirming their humanity. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is simply the space to be seen and accepted exactly as they are.